What's going on, Jeromes? So we're on day 5,972 of the contract drama with Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. What's going to happen? Who really knows at this stage? And yes, Kirk has talked about March, everybody. And yes, hitting open free agency when the new league begins, new league year begins on March 13th. It does make sense. And timeline-wise, basically, if the Vikings and Kirk want to get something done, it's got to happen pretty soon before the NFL Combine because, yes, legal tampering starts on March 11th, but all of the NFL decision makers, the GMs, the coaches, and agents are all in Indianapolis for the Combine getting some shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's as well as a Ron Swanson steak. But, yeah, you're telling me they ain't talking contracts? So if the Vikings and Kirk want to get something done, I think it does have to be before the NFL Combine starts. But the whole thing about it is, will they? Right? I actually do think that the Vikings want Kirk Cousins to hit the open market just to gauge what's out there. I think that the Vikings they would like Kirk back, but only at a certain dollar amount and only a certain number of years, and also, more importantly, certain number of years guaranteed. And I think that we're exactly where we were last offseason, where the Vikings were down the clown for another 1-year Band-Aid deal, and Kirk Cousins was looking for a 2-3-year extension with guaranteed money in the later years. Now, the Vikings certainly don't want to do that with a 36-year-old quarterback who's coming off Achilles because they do not want to be holding the bag if Kirk Cousins' play drops off, even though he's done pretty damn good over the last couple years. So that's where we're currently at. And Albert Breer over at the MMQB, it dropped some very interesting nuggets on what's going on with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins right now. So they talked about blah, 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 Jimmy Garoppolo. First off, putting Kirk in the same conversation as Jimmy G and Baker is just like, nah. But this is what Birdie wrote. At this point, it makes sense for him to do that. Well, I know. Because of some creative timing, his contract, his current deal voids after the deadline, the tag player is passed. So Vikings can't franchise tag him. Also, it would have been his third tag, so whatever. Cousins can't be franchised by the Vikings, so all he has to do to become available to the other 31 teams is, well, do nothing contractually until mid-March. At this point, it makes the most sense for him to do that. The current Minnesota brass, now going into its third season, really likes Cousins, but it's also been made clear that they're not going to go contractually where the previous regime did twice and give Cousins a fully guaranteed deal. Absent that, Cousins is now in position to hit the market like it did six years ago, blah, 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 blah. So that's interesting. Where Breer obviously has some inside information where the Vikings, maybe they do have an offer at the table. Maybe it's light years apart from where Kirk Cousins wants to be. And remember, Kirk, when Kirk Cousins was talking about the hometown discount, it's not about the money. Structure is probably more important than the money. And that guaranteed, that means, pun intended, guaranteed money in 2025, 2026, and potentially beyond. So I don't think it's about, hey, I want $50 million per year, because if it's not guaranteed, I mean, it could be $9 billion per year, and if it's not guaranteed, it really does not matter. And it's interesting what Breer says about Cousins, where it's not unlike the previous regime. So ownership is obviously the same, but it was pretty Ricky Spielman and Zimmer as head coach when Cousins signed his initial deal here, as well as the 2-year extension. Because you look at Kirko's contract history with the Vikings: 3 years, $84 million, fully guaranteed. The 2 years, $66 million. Well, it was guaranteed at signing, but effectively it was a fully guaranteed 2-year deal at $66 million. And now the Vikings, it was a 1-year Band-Aid deal that Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell patched onto Kirk their first offseason here in 2022. And you could say, well, that's a fully guaranteed deal. It's a 1-year deal. So it doesn't really matter in that regard. But Breer continued, blah, 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 blah. For what it's worth, the Vikings did touch base with Cousins camp last week as they got their pre-combine meetings going. So the lines of communication are open. More clarity could come in Indianapolis next week. And Bert even acknowledges that, hey, I mean, people certainly do talk, even though it's not the legal tampering period. Please, please, let's be adults here. But I do think that ultimately, it will come down to the Vikings and Falcons. I think that's what is most likely. Maybe the Raiders get into the mix, sure. But I think that if To a large degree, I do think that the Vikings want Kirk to hit the open market and see what is there, and maybe the market for a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles and starting over in a brand new town, brand new offense, brand new locker room isn't going to be as lucrative, especially given the fact that guys like Baker Mayfield will be available in free agency. Russell Wilson could be had likely for the league minimum, and also it's the deepest quarterback class in NFL history, or potentially one of the best, and maybe Kirk doesn't get the long-term guarantees out there because maybe other teams are exactly like the Vikings, where they're concerned about a guy coming off of an Achilles and going to be 36, that they don't want to have heavy guarantees into 2025, 2026, and beyond because they look at the Russell Wilson Broncos deal, and they're a little bit scared. So I would like to figure out what is going to go on with Kirk sooner rather than later, because then the Vikings could have contingency plans in place, whether that be signing a bridge quarterback, as well as putting wheels in motion to potentially trade up in the draft to find their quarterback in the future. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Cousins, his contract voids and he hits the open market, and a couple of days in, maybe he realizes that he's not going to get the 3 years fully guaranteed, the 4 years with 3 guaranteed that he's looking for, and maybe the best spot for him is returning to Minnesota, where he's had success the last 2 years. The locker room loves him, the coaching staff loves him, Justin Jefferson loves him, and maybe they just go from there, because maybe Kirk wants what isn't there, which is a multi-year fully guaranteed deal, and maybe that's simply not in the cards. Maybe that's simply not his market. And again, like we said, maybe the Vikings do want Kirk to hit the open market just for him to see that that's not what he's getting. It's a pretty common negotiating tactic, but it is interesting to see reported from a guy like Breer that the Vikings aren't willing to go fully guaranteed like they did in the Spielman regime, and also that they did indeed touch base because it doesn't seem like there's much to talk about other than, hey, we'll see you on March 13th, bro, or something like that. But your thoughts are thoughts. Vikings reportedly won't give Kirk a fully guaranteed deal, but they did touch base last week. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Don't support the work. Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.